with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, December 21st, 2020. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Bass Professor of Government at Harvard University, Michael Sandel, on the tyranny of merit. What's become of the common good? And meanwhile, an imminent vote on COVID rescue package happening today. $900 billion, but spoiler alert, it's not enough. The Moderna vaccine starts to ship and new priority guidelines established, but why is our government not deploying more resources to push the timeline up for all of us to be vaccinated? UK reports that a mutated version of the coronavirus spreads at a 70% faster rate, but our Surgeon General says not necessarily more fatal. The House Select Subcommittee on COVID subpoenas Health and Human Services Alex Azar and CDC's Robert Redfield for documents detailing the political suppression of COVID data and guidance. Meanwhile, in the White House, Trump and Tommy Tuberville huddle in a last-ditch effort to stay in the White House. So proud of myself for that. USDA food aid still has yet to reach millions of low-income children. And Smartmatic's cease and desist letter has Fox News celebrities in a hard about face on their election conspiracies. Warren and Jayapal introduce a ban of lawmaker stock trades, potentially cutting deeply into Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue's major sources of income. And lastly, rest in peace, Leo Panitch, a editor of the Socialist Register for 25 years and a Canadian research chair in political economy and political science at York University. All this and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. I hope your weekend was okay. Emma, I know that you were very busy betting on football games. I don't know if you want me to be that explicit, but
I wasn't betting on football games because I had too much emotional investment in my fantasy team this weekend. I was in the semifinals in the league where there was a significant payout, and we lost. We lost despite outscoring our projection by 20, 30 points. The other team just had a monster day. So
there it is. Emma came in. That was the first thing I heard about. She came in the office.
I care about the important things in life.
Lost the big rotisserie football pool. Well, I'm sorry, but better not next year, I guess, right? I mean,
exactly.
There should be an asterisk against this year anyways, right? I mean...
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, we had the first overall pick and took Saquon Barkley, and he tore his ACL week 2, and we still were in the top 4. So I take this as a win for the year, for sure.
Yes, well, I will give you that win because I didn't understand anything you just said. With that said, hope your weekend was good. We are in the final week of our live shows for 2020, and all I can say is good riddance. good riddance to 2020. We will get deep into the rescue package that we are expecting will pass today. It is nothing particularly bad in the bill. It's just insufficient. Right. It's insufficient for the moment. It is insufficient. There are just. It is astonishing the ability of the U.S. government. How much of an ability the U.S. government has to move the timeline from when they are saying everyone will be vaccinated, which is maybe late fall 2021. The ability to move that timeline up 3 or 4 months is certainly within the capacity of the wealthiest nation on earth. I got a story right here. In Germany, they are awaiting their vaccine. They are building mass vaccination centers and built them in less than a week. Meanwhile, we are relying on perhaps the drive-through of some pharmacies to deliver this vaccine. We have the ability, the president does now, and the incoming president does, to use the Defense Production Act to ramp up the production of these vaccinations. But apparently, at this point, our lawmakers don't feel it's necessary to set up any type of major infrastructure and just contemplate how many billions, hundreds of billions of dollars would be saved, if that's what you're concerned about in terms of the economy, by pushing up that timeline. Never mind the lives and the just sort of the general well-being. And I only say that, I only put it in that order, I should be clear, because that seems to be the
purported concern of the Trump administration, even though they're basically playing with house money at this point. I mean, this is what the government is for. If the government is for anything, it is to step up and provide some sort of structure in this international pandemic. But they are instead focused on cutting costs. It is
insane. We will talk more about that later in the program, and in a moment we will have Professor Michael Sandel with us. In the meantime, this is the season of giving. Many folks looking for charities. We get a lot of questions as to what charities we recommend around here. I can tell you that for over 10 years, GiveWell.org has helped donors find the charities and projects that save and improve lives most per dollar. And this is how they do it. They spend over 20,000 hours a year researching charitable organizations. They handpick a few of the highest impact, evidence-based charities. All that research publicly available, totally for free on their website. Since 2010, GiveWell has helped over 50,000 donors direct over $500 million to the most effective charities. GiveWell never takes any fees. All of your tax-deductible donations are given to the charity you choose. I can tell you that I've mentioned this before, over Hanukkah, the kids, they get to pick a couple of charities in lieu of 1 or 2 nights of presents, depending on their age. I'm not going to get into the specifics. And they're fairly good-natured about it. At least the older one is. The younger one is actually pretty good about it too. But one of the sites that I gave them to look at was GiveWell, and to choose out. I mean, for me personally, I found Give Directly, I think it's called, where you literally they target people in this country, other countries, low-income folks, maybe folks who have been hit by COVID, direct money, essentially, is all it is. And, there's a lot of research out there. This is just for my purposes, a lot of research out there that shows the incredible effectiveness of just giving people money because they know how to spend it the best. There are other charities on there that you can check out. They have all been thoroughly researched for their impact, dollar for dollar. That's what's so great about givewell.org. I give directly. I don't know if it's associated with it. I don't know. I think the give may be just a coincidence. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. You only have a few days left to make a tax-deductible donation before the new year. Go right now. And when you make your first donation to GiveWell, your gift will be matched up to $250. Just go to givewell.org/majority, pick podcast and majority report at checkout. This matching offer is good only for as long as funds last. Get your first donation matched up to $250. Givewell.org/majority and select podcast and majority report at checkout. Okay, now it's my pleasure to welcome to the program Michael Sandel. He teaches political philosophy at Harvard University, where he is the Ann T. and Robert M. Bass Professor of Government. His latest book is The Tyranny of Merit, What's Become of the Common Good. Professor, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you, Sam. Emma?
So, well, let's just start, I guess, with, what the term meritocracy purports to mean. It started out as something slightly different than I think it's been deployed over the past 30 years. Tell us about that.
Yes, in many ways, we think of meritocracy as a good thing, as an ideal even of a just society. It's the idea that if everyone has an equal chance, an equal start in life, then the winners will deserve their winnings. That's the attractive way, Sam, of stating the ideal. But there are two problems these days with meritocracy that I've described in my book, The Tyranny of Merit. One of them is that we don't live up to the meritocratic principles we profess. Chances are not truly equal. We all know this. But there's a deeper problem, and this is the maybe more provocative claim in the book. Even if we did, even if somehow we could make chances truly equal opportunity, still meritocracy would have a dark side. And that dark side has to do with the tendency of the winners to believe that their success is their own doing, the measure of their merit, and by implication, that those who lose out, those who fall short, have no one to blame but themselves. And we're seeing this dark side in our politics today. I think it's part of what's fueled the populist backlash against elites.
All right. Well, I want to just go back before we get into those two problems, because I want people to understand that, because the term meritocracy was coined as to describe a problem, essentially.
Yes, and we easily forget that.
Remind us of that, because I think that's important. It's fascinating to me just that we have taken that term, and over the course of, I guess, really 30 years, from the 1950s when it was coined to when it was started to be deployed by politicians, turned that term on its head.
Into an
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Go ahead, Emma. Did you have something?
No, that was just my contribution there. I wanted to hear from you.
Okay. Well, yes, that's exactly right. The term was coined by a sociologist, a British sociologist named Michael Young, who wrote a book called The Rise of the Meritocracy in 1958. And he was describing not an ideal society, but a dystopia. Now, this was at a time when the British class system, aristocratic hierarchy was breaking down, and more members of the working class, children of the working class, were able to get an education and compete. But he saw the dark side, and he coined meritocracy to describe a society that he imagined would result sometime in the future if everyone came to believe that where they landed in life was truly the result of their own doing, rather than the result of the accident of birth, as in aristocratic societies. And he was not defending aristocracy by any means. He was a Labour Party activist, thinker. But he thought that this would generate a sense of entitlement among those who would feel they had earned their success, and that it would be demoralizing, humiliating even, for those who struggled, because they would say to themselves, I had a chance. Maybe I just lacked the talent and effort to succeed. So that was Michael Young's dystopian scenario when he coined the term meritocracy. And then, Sam, just as you say, by the 1980s and 90s, meritocracy became an ideal that was invoked by politicians across the political spectrum. And it became really the defining political project. I call it the rhetoric of rising. How often have we heard it? If only we can remove barriers to success, then everyone will be able to rise as far as their efforts and talents will take them, and we'll have a just society. And this is the picture that has a dark side, an implicit insult that meritocratic elites have missed.
And I mean, I'm thinking of, I mean, you saw, Thatcher had rhetoric of this rhetoric of rising. I mean, Bill Clinton, Americans want, if they play by the rules, to move up, the implication is that there's nothing wrong with the system. And therefore, if it doesn't happen, and that they're arguing about making sure the system is functioning in that way. And then if it doesn't, it is the fault of the individual that they haven't risen in some fashion. How did that happen, though? Like, how did we go from that? I mean, it reminds me of the phrase "pull yourself up by your bootstraps" was also introduced as a satire, because it's impossible to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But at one point in the development and the colloquialization of that term, it becomes like an edict. And how does that happen? Like, what philosophies were deployed that made society accept the complete opposite of what the meaning of that term was?
It's very interesting how this happened. And it begins to enter into mainstream public discourse in a big way in the 1980s and 1990s. And what's interesting is that it begins with very stringent notions of individual responsibility introduced by Reagan and Thatcher. And of course, they were defending free market, robust free market, laissez-faire individualism against the idea of the welfare state. So they deployed this idea of individual responsibility for one's fate and merit, rising based on your own effort. And what's striking is that when they passed from the political scene and were succeeded by center-left politicians and parties, Bill Clinton in the US, Tony Blair in Britain, they moderated but consolidated the market faith of the Reagan and Thatcher years. They softened its harsh edges, but they didn't fundamentally challenge it. To the contrary, the meritocratic rhetoric, they embraced and elaborated and put right at the center of politics. And this is what I describe. And I track this in the book because it's now possible actually to chart the frequency of the use of various political phrases, like rising as far as your efforts and talents will take you, for example, or what you earn will depend on what you learn. Bill Clinton, for example, reiterated this. Tony Blair spoke explicitly about merit and meritocracy. And then into the Obama years, you can make it if you try. Turns out Obama used that phrase more than 140 times in his speeches. You can make it if you try. So it was actually, it began, this embrace of meritocracy as a response to inequality, began with Reagan and Thatcher, but was embraced and became a part of mainstream center-left liberal public discourse.
Well, there's also just this kind of arrogant approach there where you think that you can empirically measure meritocracy or a system that allows for meritocracy when there's really no way to do that. It can be a rigged system, but people can still believe that it's correct. Like, it reminds me about that UC Berkeley monopoly study where they favored it. They told people that it would be rigged in certain players' favor. And then they started to believe, though, that they earned and that they were winning Monopoly psychologically, even though they knew that they had been given more money or whatever. How can you differentiate between some utopia of a meritocracy and a system that's set up so perfectly and one that people only purport to be equal? If that makes sense.
Well, yeah, it's very interesting, Emma, what you're suggesting. And there have been studies across countries about whether people believe it is possible to rise from humble origins based on effort and hard work. And overwhelmingly, when asked this question, Americans say yes. Hard work will get you to the top. And in European countries, for the most part, there's much more skepticism about this idea that hard work will be the engine of upward mobility. And what's paradoxical is, though we Americans console ourselves with the widening inequalities by saying, well, but it's possible to rise. We're a mobile society, unlike old Europe, where people are stuck in the class of their birth. It's actually the opposite now. Rates of upward mobility one generation to the next are less in the United States than they are in many European countries, even though we believe more fervently that it's possible to rise. So this version of responding to inequality, not directly, not through structural reform of the economy, but by telling people, go to college, then you can rise. That's been a powerful American idea. And I think it's actually weakened the American progressive project in recent decades because it's distracted us. It's been almost a kind of alternative to contending with the deepening inequality that market-driven globalization has given us.
So, okay. And so that is part of your first critique, I should say, which is that the idea of our meritocracy is an illusion because the meritocracy as it is set up in this country is, in fact, not really a meritocracy on its own terms. And that is because the moment I am born, if I am from a certain zip code, I have advantages that are hidden and will push me through that meritocracy the whole way through. I also have a subset of that before we move on to the second one that has been in my head for 25 years. I think actually I talked about it in a basement in Harvard Square in a comedy club. I was not a very good comedian, but this idea of a meritocracy, it is set up by the people who decide what the metrics are within that meritocracy necessarily will choose values that they happen to excel at, right? I mean, if I'm, I think at the time I would say, if we were setting up a meritocracy when I was a kid growing up in Worcester, it would be how many Busch beers can you drink in a parking lot? And that's how we would determine who would rise in our meritocracy. But that's just because that's what we did.
And you were good at that.
And I was pretty good at it, not as good as some of the others, but I was a middling. But that is one of the problems with a meritocracy that you cannot escape in some way. And is that really sort of like your second critique, is that the idea of any meritocracy, never mind that ours is deficient, any meritocracy necessarily is going to devalue people in some type of arbitrary fashion.
Yes, let me say just one more word about the first critique, that we don't live up to the meritocracy we proclaim. if you look at SAT scores, so one measure, unlike the beer drinking measure, one measure that the meritocracy uses to determine who gets into selective colleges and universities is the SAT. But and the SAT was set up precisely to compensate for the fact that some kids went to fancy schools where they could learn Greek and Latin, and other kids went to public schools where they didn't teach that stuff. But in practice, the SAT strongly tracks family income. The higher your family income, the greater the chance of getting a good score on the SAT. And if you look at the student bodies of Ivy League universities today, there are more students from the top 1% in these places than there are from the bottom half of the country combined. So this bears out the first point that you were emphasizing, Sam. But as for the second, the question is it really true that even if we had a perfect meritocracy, is it really true that people deserve the winnings that come from landing on top? To show why this, I think, is doubtful, take a concrete example. LeBron James is a great basketball player, and he makes tens of millions. Now, part of it is effort. He trains very hard, but I could practice 24 hours a day for my whole life and never be a great basketball player. Part of it are natural talents and gifts. But is it LeBron's doing, or is it his good luck that he is such a gifted athlete? And more than this, is it his doing that he happens to live in a society and at a time when we love basketball and reward it lavishly if you're really good at basketball? If he had lived, or is that too his good luck? If he had lived back in the days of the Renaissance, they didn't care much about basketball. They cared more about fresco painters. So these are elements of contingency and luck and fortune and also indebtedness that we easily forget. By we, I mean those of us here who, though perhaps less gifted than LeBron, succeed in one way or another. We forget the luck, and meritocracy invites us almost to forget the good luck that helps us on our way.
That's, I think, what Emma was saying with the monopoly experiment. Let me just ask. I just want to maybe I will migrate my beer drinking meritocracy analogy to the basketball, because there seems to be also another element, right? And we have different. There can be different meritocracies that exist in any given society. You can have a mercantilist versus a militarist, let's say, a type of meritocracies. Using basketball, it's not just that LeBron is lucky because basketball happens to be popular now, as opposed to Bob Cousy in the 50s, or that he got lucky because he's also, a great athlete and he's tall, but it's as if LeBron was in charge of setting up a game and saying, well, I'm 6'10" or something. We're going to put the hoop at 10 feet instead of 5 feet. Right. And that everything emanates from the ability to construct the rules of the game in such a way.
And that's just the game of basketball is what would be claimed.
And then, then the idea is that basketball is a natural phenomenon. It just happens to exist. But it's not. And it's constructed by people who, in the context of our society, who know, maybe they're not even conscious of it, they say being able to dunk is the highest of values. Just so happens they're all above 6'5" or something, and have a great vertical leap. I mean, that too is a question of power, and this seems to me to be part of the neoliberal and I'm talking Mont Pelerin sort of, I guess, ideas that have infected our societies in many respects.
Yes. And if we think about how the rules of the game have been set up, if we look broadly at our economy and our society and our politics, the fundamental rules of the game, well, for purposes of this discussion, Sam, Emma, are two. The rules of the game of the market, and also increasingly of higher education. Take higher education first. We have in recent decades made higher education the arbiter of opportunity in a meritocratic society. Colleges and universities dispense the credentials and define the merit that our society, a meritocratic society, rewards. As a result, the ability to do well on standardized tests and to get good grades and to do well in school have become not only privileged in deciding who will make a lot of money, but have been valorized as the basis of social recognition and esteem. One of the problems, though, is that most people don't have a four-year college education. We easily forget this. Nearly 2/3 of Americans do not. So it's folly, I think, to create an economy that sets as a necessary condition of dignified work and a decent life a four-year college degree that most people don't have. So that's part of the problem. And the broader problem, talking about the rules, how the rules are designed, you mentioned the neoliberal way of defining the rules. Over the last 4 decades, we've embraced market mechanisms with an intensity in defining who gets ahead and who gets rewarded. And we've slid into the assumption that the money people make is the measure of their contribution to the common good. But this is a mistake. This is something we need to critically reflect on. And it connects with your point, Sam, about not only how the talents and gifts are allocated in the role of fortune and luck and accident, but also what qualities are prized by the rules that are in place in allocating not only material goods, but honor, recognition, and esteem.
So let's talk about the reform, because you contrast the idea of equality of opportunity, which is what we have been sold through the 80s, 90s, aughts, if you will. And you contrast that with the equality of result or outcome. And you say that there's also there's another perspective, which you called the democratic equality of condition. Explain those concepts to us, and then I don't want to get ahead of myself, but explain those concepts to us.
Right. Democracy does not require that everyone have the same income and wealth, but it does require that we have a sense that we share a common life. And this requires a range of things. It requires broad democratic access to learning, to education, and especially to civic education. It requires that everyone, whatever role they perform in the society, whatever work they do, be able to win honor and recognition and appreciation for the contributions they make. So part of what I'm suggesting to bring us closer, to rely less on equality of opportunity and meritocracy, and to bring us closer to a broad democratic equality of condition, by which I really mean a kind of equality of respect, where everyone can hold his or her head up high and look others directly in the eye and voice their opinions, regardless of differences of class or ethnicity or race. I think we need to shift our focus from arming people for meritocratic competition. That's the rhetoric of rising. That's you can make it if you try. That's responding to inequality by saying, well, maybe if you get a college degree, you too can escape it. We need to shift from that kind of arming people for meritocratic competition to focusing more in our politics on the dignity of work by asking what are the conditions that would accord dignity to work of all kinds, not only to the kinds of work that depend on four-year college degrees when most people don't have them, and that depend especially on having prestigious credentials. We have a steep hierarchy of esteem between higher education and especially competitive colleges and universities, on the one hand, and the forms of learning that most people depend on to prepare themselves for the world of work. I'm thinking of state colleges, two-year community colleges, vocational and technical training schools. We woefully underinvest in these forms of learning. Not only that, we don't accord them the honor and recognition and respect they deserve. And this has an effect on the lack of honor and recognition that we accord the people who prepare themselves for work of that kind, work that doesn't require a college degree. So those would be some of the starting points. We could talk about others, and in the book, I have some other suggestions.
How do we achieve what you're talking about in the context of a capitalist society? Right. I mean, and I would also imagine, like, you know, really what we're also talking about is people who don't necessarily even attend a community college or a vocational school. I mean, you know, guys I knew growing up who are, you know, plumbers or electricians, some of them are doing very, very well.
Sure.
And, you know, it's like it's in terms of dollars, and you know, and maybe in certain circles they're not as respected. But I mean, we're talking about people who are laborers, who are working in like service industry. But I mean, how within the context of a society where your value is so tied into your ability to function as a consumer, essentially, right, or to segregate yourself from the rest of society because and their ills because of your money. Right. How do we do that in a capitalist society? Because we can't just say everybody needs to, you know, respect and not look down upon, you know, I don't know, the person who's, you know, ringing you up at the grocery market or something.
Right. It can't be merely hortatory. I think you're right about that. So part of it, I think, is shifting. And this is a matter of not only of economics, but of also values and of culture, shifting the public culture to think of ourselves not only or even primarily as consumers, but also as producers. Because a producer ethic invites us to think about the conditions for contributing and the conditions under which we value and recognize the contributions people make to the economy and to the common good, not only their purchasing power as consumers. And I argue in the book that the producer ethic, more than the consumer ethic, which has predominated in recent decades, the producer ethic is more conducive to a civic ethic, a democratic ethic. Now, how might we begin this shift? You were mentioning forms of work, Sam, that don't even involve trades like plumbers and electricians, but service workers, retail workers. It's been interesting during this pandemic. There is a kind of opening because we've all learned something, become unmistakably aware of something. Those of us with the luxury of working from home can't help but recognize how deeply we depend on workers we often overlook. Not only the doctors and nurses caring for COVID patients in the hospitals, but I'm thinking also of delivery workers, warehouse workers, grocery store clerks, home healthcare providers, truck drivers, childcare workers. These are not the best paid or most honored workers in our society. But now we are all calling them essential workers. This could be, now this may fade as the pandemic recedes, but it could be the opening for a broader public debate about how to bring their pay and recognition into better alignment with the importance of the work they do, work whose importance we recognize now in the midst of this pandemic.
Does I got to say, I'm a little bit skeptical only because we just had a COVID relief bill that had no recognition of that at all. In fact, they were able to strip hazard pay out of the bill for these essential workers. And so, but when you say producer, aren't you really saying labor? And,
Yes.
And there, it seems to me that we as a society don't necessarily have the ability to say to UPS, pay your drivers more or this and that. But as a society, what we do have the ability is to decommodify a lot of the things that everybody needs.
Yeah.
Therefore, once you have those basic needs met by society, the idea, that's society right there saying, we recognize your labor, your existence, in some fashion or another contributes to the existence of our society. And therefore, this is a baseline. And anything above that, is secondary. But here's the way that we say everybody has dignity. We give you these decommodified things, healthcare, maybe housing, education, just as a start, right?
Right. Well, I'm in favor of all of that, Sam. And I like the idea of framing it as decommodifying essential human and civic goods, healthcare, education, housing, and the like. And we could extend that to include a truly public transportation system, including public parks and recreation, including the civic infrastructure for a common life, which gets back to this idea of a broad democratic equality of condition. So I think that's an important starting point. But I think we also, while it's true we can't tell private companies, well, we can actually tell private companies that they can't pay their workers less than a minimum wage or a living wage. So I wouldn't give up on that. We can strengthen unions so that workers can have a voice, not only with their private employers, but also in politics more generally. And we can take measures, various regulatory reforms, that undo a lot of the damaging reforms in the other direction we've seen in recent decades with the deregulation of finance, for example, preventing stock buybacks, and various other measures that would go some way toward redressing the imbalance and the injustice that's introduced even before the social safety net and redistributive politics gets going. Wage subsidies is another topic that we could discuss. So I like your idea very much of decommodifying these essential human and civic goods and services. But I think we also need to debate how to reconfigure the economy in a way not only that redistributes income and access to the good things in life across the society, but also that affirms the dignity of the work that everyone does, regardless of the credentials required to achieve it.
Lastly, I just want to talk about this notion, and I'm not, I think I agree with that prescription. I can't help but think that, the most cohesive way society can say to everyone that you have value is to actually give them things directly of value. And we can still have those secondary, which I perceive them as secondary reforms, in the sense that, like, look, if it's much easier for me to we want to strengthen unions so that we can have bargaining power in the, between labor and management, giving me healthcare so that I can leave this job and not have to worry about that. That's going to give me some power in that relationship. If I have child, it's going to give me power, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to just turn back just to a moment to that turn where the liberal establishment adopted this sort of more market-friendly perspective and this individualism. I was struck by that in your book. It reminds me of this of I think it's Adam Curtis. Is that who it is? He had this documentary, Hypernormalization, which I don't know if you're familiar with. He's a British documentary who talks about that turn in the 70s where the left lost part of its communitarian perspective and saw its power in individualism.
Yeah.
And to me, that atomization seems to be sort of fundamental, because once you become more atomized, then it's like every person for themselves. And if I can figure out a system that's going to put me up and, then you're creating a hierarchy in many respects. And then everybody wants to be at the top of that hierarchy in some fashion or another.
Well, I agree that the market-friendly turn of liberal and progressive politics and the deregulation that went with it. We've talked some about the policies, but more pervasive and corrosive was the uncritical embrace, I think, by liberal and progressive politics and political parties of a kind of market-based individualism of the kind that you're describing. And when it's connected to the meritocratic attitudes towards success that we've been discussing, then it becomes deeply corrosive, and it inclines credentialed meritocratic elites to look down on those less credentialed than themselves. And this creates, I think, the anger and resentment, the sense of grievance that has roiled our politics, that paved the way to Donald Trump, and we see it happening in many European democracies. One last element here, and we've talked a lot about the values and the cultural shift so I argue we need to consider. Part of it has to do with the way the successful view their own success, our own success. Because the more I think of my success as my own doing, the measure of my merit, the harder it is to imagine myself in other people's shoes. The harder it is for me to say, there, but for the accident of birth or the grace of God or the luck of the draw, go I. And so the individualism, together with the meritocratic hubris, as I call it in the book, makes it very difficult to achieve the sense of solidarity, of shared citizenship, that a politics of the common good requires. So one of the obstacles to the more generous social welfare state and public provision that you've described and that I agree with wholeheartedly, it's important to see, I think, that one of the obstacles to achieving it, apart from the economic interests that may be arrayed against it, are the attitudes towards success, the meritocratic hubris that is corrosive, ultimately, of the common good. So this is really to describe a political and economic project that is, at the same time, Sam, Emma, a moral and even spiritual project to reconsider our attitudes towards success.
Michael Sandel, the book is The Tyranny of Merit, What's Become of the Common Good. Thanks so much for your time today. We'll put a link to that at majority.fm. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, quick break, and we will be back in a moment. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We didn't see much of that, of what Sandel was talking about in the context of the debate over this relief package, as it were. And it is, it's very limited. We'll go through more. Tomorrow we're going to break down the details of it after the final vote. But and we'll talk also about the politics of it, both in terms of what it means to pass this now and the question of why wasn't there an attempt to pass this earlier. But here is Mitch McConnell celebrating this stimulus that is going to presumably pass today. He is also excited because it gives David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler something to talk about for those Republican voters that may have felt like maybe we need to have a democratically controlled Senate to get some type of stimulus. Here is Mitch McConnell.
For the American people, we can finally report what our nation has needed to hear for a very long time. More help is on the way. Moments ago, in consultation with our committees, the 4 leaders of the Senate and the House finalized an agreement. There will be another major rescue package for the American people. As our citizens continue battling this coronavirus this holiday season, they will not be fighting alone. We've agreed to a package of nearly $900 billion. It is packed with targeted policies that help struggling Americans who've already waited entirely too long.
Now, of course, Mitch McConnell could have passed a even bigger bill, well, 7 months ago, 5 months ago, 4 months ago, 2 months ago. At any time, he could have had a bigger bill had he wanted one. There was a $1.8 trillion offer supposedly on the table coming from the White House. We don't know. Nancy Pelosi said, okay, we'll take that, and then forced Mitch McConnell to either vote it down, not bring it to a vote, or vote for it at the time. That did not happen. That's where we are now. We will litigate that. I have been litigating that for, well, quite a long time. But here's Nancy Pelosi talking about this bill. Again, no city or state funding whatsoever. Not a dollar. Not a dollar.
We also have in the legislation direct payments, which were not in the Republican bill, to America's working families. I would like them been bigger, but they are significant, and they will be going out soon.
That is the what Pelosi is trumpeting when people ask, why didn't you just, this is very close to what Mitch McConnell wanted with his skinny bill that they passed in the Senate a couple of times, or at least brought up and was filibustered. Why didn't you just take that? And it comes down to the $600 per person in a family if your family is under $75,000. That's helpful. I mean, there are some families that can't raise $400, but at this point, we're 9 months out. We're still maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 months out until, most people get vaccinated. That is woefully insufficient, and still giving McConnell and Kelly Loeffler and Perdue something to run on. I mean,
yeah, and by the way, Steve Mnuchin is saying that these checks could go out within a week or something like that, that they could potentially be deposited into people's bank accounts quite quickly. I'm not sure if he's just posturing there, but say theoretically these checks hit people's bank accounts before the Georgia runoffs. Mitch McConnell wins again. I mean, the point is that Pelosi has no explanation for why she turned down the $1.8 trillion deal that was ostensibly on the table and put it in McConnell's court. She's not answering questions. CNN is asking her about it, and she's walking out of the room because it was done for political purposes. And so now we have a weaker bill because of it.
And look, I can understand doing things for political purposes, if that's what it is, and we should make the assessment. But I don't even know that that was a politically smart move to make. And if so, I don't understand why you do it now, as opposed to wait till after the Georgia election. Because if the politics made sense then, I don't understand how they don't make sense now. But I don't. I mean, and I'm open to an explanation.
And it wasn't even an effective political move then, because newsflash, the Democrats thought they were going to take a lot more seats back in the Senate, and they didn't, even if they win these two runoffs, and they lost seats in the House.
And the real problem is that Joe Biden may have gotten into office because of it. I suppose that could be the argument, that not preventing Donald Trump from doing another bill would have helped helped Joe Biden get into office. But Joe Biden's going to have a heck of a time, and the Democrats are going to have a heck of a time in 2022 if cities and states are engaging in massive layoffs and massive cuts to programs. That is how you a lack of government spending on those levels is how you're going to wind up with an anemic.
It's about more than winning. It's about investing so they can win in 2022.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's it for us today. We will go through that bill more tomorrow. If you missed any part of this program, remember it plays at 5 p.m. and at 10 p.m. on the Choice channel on the Peacock app, or you can just go in and search Seder, Seder, and find any of our archive shows or our most recent one. We will see you tomorrow, unless you are staying with us, in which case we will see you right now.
We're seeing you right now. Hello.
You're being seen, ladies and gentlemen.
I see you, as they say in Avatar.
What's Avatar? Is that movie?
I haven't.
The biggest movie of all time.
No, I mean, it's amazing.
I
think I saw it on an airplane or something.
It is forgettable, though, for the biggest movie of all time.
That's what I was about to say, right? Like, usually movies that are that successful, they have resonance in the public consciousness. Sam doesn't even know one of the three main taglines. Do you know the mineral they were trying to get in that movie?
In all honesty,
it's the stupidest name of all time. And that's
I was
why
on
I'm
an
telling
airplane.
It to you.
What was it?
Unobtainium.
Was it hard to obtain?
I think.
I get that sense.
I hate it so much.
I don't remember that movie.
They're blue.
Things go in and out. The only thing I remember is Black Bear. That was a great movie.
Yes.
Great film. Matthew Film Guys. Did I talk about that already? I did, right?
Yeah.
Because I watched it not this past weekend. This past weekend I watched Iron Man 1 and 2. So did that.
Yeah, you told me that already.
Yeah. Saul made me watch those. And
Iron Man 1's pretty good.
Better than the Avenger movies. Folks, just a reminder, this show exists because of your support. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you support the free show. You get the fun half as well. Jointhemajority.report.com. Also, don't forget AM Quickie. Get your headlines every morning. amquickie.com, or you can just search AM Quickie on your podcast app, We got merch, shop.majorityreportradio.com. Check that out. Don't forget, Nomiki's show. Find the Nomiki's show on YouTube at youtube.com/Nomiki's show. And she does that Tuesday through Friday. Also, Jamie, what's happening on the Antifada's Twitch stream?
Hey, so, start my video. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So this week on the Antifada, we are still in soft launch mode. Not really sure what the difference is between soft and hard, besides the fact that someday I assume we will no longer have half an hour of technical difficulties at the beginning of every broadcast. We've been doing that every Wednesday at 7 p.m. with a bunch of really cool guests. Don't really know what we're going to do this Wednesday, but that's the exciting part. You just got to tune in and find out.
Who knows what technical problems we'll have.
Yeah, exactly. And we also have our podcast still. Check out our episode from last week with Terrence Ray from Trillbillies. We talk about J.D. Vance's horrible book and movie, Hillbilly Elegy, and kind of use it as a jumping off point to talk about the political economy of rural America and the ways it has been damaged by neoliberal policy and ideology. And then this week, what do we got? Oh, it's a Christmas episode. They talk about, it's a Dudes Rock episode. I'm not on it, but they talk about anti-Semitism. Jake Flores is there. It's very festive. So check that out too. Patreon.com/the Antifada.
Matt, what's happening on in the super producer Matt Leck media empire?
Yeah, so in that Left Reckoning on Thursday night, we had an episode, David and I, on YouTube. We were talking about Alabama Amazon Union. We talked about we played about 20 minutes of the Biden meeting with the black leaders Zoom call that The Intercept posted, which is very interesting. Everybody should watch that full thing if you kind of want a look into how Biden operates, because they make some interesting asks. I mean, some of them are a little bit critical about like the Vilsack appointment, which we also get into, and Biden just barks at them. It is bizarre. But the full thing is up at The Intercept, but we play about 20 minutes of that, so check that out. Oh, we also talk about Dan Crenshaw being bad. He lied about so he followed a sex worker on Twitter over the last week and then said that it might be some kind of hack. So we looked deep at it. We gave him some operational security tips there. So check that out. And on Saturday I did another Madden and Mark stream where I listened to the first 2 chapters of the 18th Premiere while playing Madden, and I'm too good at Madden, so I started playing Cyberpunk to make it a little bit more interesting.
Why does he have to say that he was hacked? Why can't he just say it's Twitter and I'm following a sex worker on Twitter? Who cares?
I mean, that's what an alpha would do.
Yeah, in a super conservative Texas district that's gerrymandered for like all evangelicals, basically outside of Houston.
But you could, like, I'm spreading the gospel.
Yeah,
I would say like. Yeah, I accidentally like fat fingered it and followed by accident. I don't know.
Or just like, I don't know. I mean, didn't like Jesus also talk to sex workers?
I've spent time in that district, and I don't think they would be receptive to that message.
Fair enough. This is breaking news. This is pretty nuts. Jake Sherman, he's with Politico, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
He reports that they cannot get the COVID relief government funding bill. I guess they did both. This $1.4 trillion bill that I think they punted for a week, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or is this the or are they actually settled on the government funding bill? We got to double check on that. Uploaded to the internet. The computers keep bugging out. Several sources told me, have heard about a corrupt file in the education piece of the bill. All sections need to be combined into one file. So
Jesus Christ.
I don't know if that's a function of like, there's been these massive hacks of the computer systems, or if somebody just accidentally like had a virus on their computer as they were doing the education. But I mean, God,
It's Betsy DeVos's last stand.
exactly. I mean,
Voss was buying another gun.
It's not outside the realm of possibility that there are people in the Trump administration who are just like, we're going to F this up. I mean, they're doing it with personnel. You know, I imagine that the attitude of some of these people is just like, let's just, you know, cause headaches. I don't know, but
they lost the text of the bill.
It's not that they lost.
I'm like, you guys got to email these things to yourselves. That's what I do.
Shit, everything got deleted. They can't seem to upload it to the internet, so nobody knows what's in the bill. I don't know if
BitTorrent.
The internet dog ate my bill.
If that's going to inhibit the vote, but we shall see. All right, 646-257-3920 is the number. If you want to be part of the phone of the program, you can call in. Otherwise, you can IM us. I am the show at by using our app, and the app is completely free. MajorityApp.com. It's a iOS or Android app, and you can IM the program. We will see you in the fun half.
In for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck them. Almost says what?
What?
Almost says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fun half of the program. Street Cred says right-wing protesters are trying to storm the State House in Salem, Oregon right now on the IM. I am brought to you, of course, by the Majority Report app. Go to majorityapp.com. Carl from the Geest. Some guy online said Jamie is against direct action. I am so confused. I do not think that's, I'm going to guess, Jamie, that is not an accurate description of what you are for or against.
He also said she's a neo-lib, so.
These are lies.
If you disagree with one particular YouTube
I don't even
personality,
want to go there right now, but
right,
yes, I understand. There's a lot of dumbness out there.
I that was all I was saying, and I'm done.
Congressional softball fan. Hi, Sam. I've been really enjoying the new Around the Horn show format lately. Anyway, would it be possible for one to get a peek at those Boston comedian game stats? Asking for a friend. No. You're confused. We didn't take statistics back. I guess it's conceivable, but we didn't do it back then. That was like the early 90s. Like somebody, I don't know who would have compiled that. There is actually a couple of guys in my head who could have compiled that. I'm talking about the game I'm involved now. Their statistics. The Brooklyn Naturals league. I did not have a great league last year, and this year I didn't play. Obviously, we didn't play, but my rookie year was, and my sophomore year I think was pretty good. All right, let's go to the phones. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. Good afternoon, Emma. Good afternoon, Jamie. This is John from San Antonio.
Hey, John.
Hi, John. How are you doing?
I'm holding in there. I'm going to talk about what's happened. Many longtime listeners know I was a caregiver to my mother since I mentioned her a few times on the show relating to politics, like when I called in to talk about the Jimmo versus Sebelius case. Unfortunately, my mother passed away at the age of 96 on December 9th and will be buried tomorrow. My mother showed unconditional love and set a great example to her sons and daughters. She was a kind and giving person who always wanted to help people in need. Growing up during the Depression was hard, and work was very difficult to come by for my grandfather, who had 6 children to support. My grandfather was very grateful to get a job in Lufkin, Texas in 1935 through the Works Project Administration, which was created by FDR. Over the 8 years of the existence, the WA put 8.5 million people to work. My mother and my grandparents were huge admirers of FDR and would enjoy listening to the fireside chats. When World War II started, my mother began working at Kelly Field and aiding in the war effort. I'm the youngest of 5 children, and my earliest memories revolved around talking about politics and elections in the household. My father was a union politician, so both of them were shaped by their views. I was shaped by their views. When Mother became older, I loved to buy her books about FDR and discuss them with her. Frances Perkins was her favorite member of the FDR's cabinet. Mother gave money to many various charities, including Doctors Without Borders and various environmental groups, and voted in every election. I moved into the house I grew up in a little over 6 years ago to help my mother, who was diagnosed with dementia. On March 12th of this year, she had a 3rd fall in the facility she was living in, and her face was badly bruised, and the facility did not contact me about this position. This is the same day that COVID visiting restrictions were put in place. So I told the facility I'm taking her to the hospital to be checked out, then I'm taking her back to the house she spent almost 70 years living in. It was one of the best decisions that I made in my life. I wrote a long thread about this on Twitter, and the late Michael Brooks and Matt Leck retweeted it, and it became fairly popular. I remember watching some of the early Bernie and Clinton debates with her, and she was very impressed with Bernie. My mother was a great proponent of love and believed that Bernie was proposing what Bernie was proposing were extensions of the SDR legacy that she full-heartedly believed in since her childhood. I also want to thank the Medicare home health and hospice programs who helped give my mother showers and administer medicines when she was in hospice care, and was very involved. And the companies who gave them were very well compensated by Medicare. We will continue to fight for Medicare for all and improve benefits for senior citizens, but we should also appreciate the services for the elderly who are in need and currently which are quite good and don't incur any extra cost. So I love you, Mother, and you'll be greatly missed.
Well, John, I'm sorry to hear of your loss. You couldn't have done more as a son for your mom, and I think good on you for that. And let me give her a shofar. You okay with that?
Absolutely.
How are you doing? Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. You just gotta move on. It's been already 12 days since she died because of COVID. All the funerals have been pushed back, and so yeah, just hanging in there. You just gotta keep moving on. But just reflecting on her life, she was just such a great person, and I just want to say that I know you talk about Mila and Saul a lot, and I know that you have a tremendous amount of love for them also. And so I just, it's very important that you say, how much you love your family members and your friends, because life is fleeting and fragile, and you never know when somebody's going to go. We all experienced that with Michael. And we all deeply miss Michael also, and he was very important to this show, and Emma filled in very well also, and the show was great this year, during COVID, and I'm just so happy that that the show is has helped pick people's spirits up and help helped everybody, informed everybody, because it's a very informative show. Like I said, when I was the first call, when Cernovich, pulled his routine to support you, Sam, and I'm, you just mean a lot to me. And also with Ring of Fire, that's a great show also, and I'm glad you're on it also now, Emma. So thank you very much.
All right, well, John,
thanks so much, John.
Rest in peace to
your mom.
Appreciate the call, and obviously your contribution to the show has been awesome, and it's much appreciated. And I can tell you, there is no doubt that your mom knew that you loved her. You dedicated quite a bit of your life to taking care of her, and so all right, man. Well, hang in there, and we'll hear from you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, John. I'm sorry for your loss. Sounds like she had an amazing life.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Going to the IMs. Craven James, $600 stimulus check might not seem too valuable until you realize they're all being printed on sheets of pure unobtainium. Thank you.
Good one.
Chris from VA, do you see the Georgia runoff as something winnable, or is there going to be a massive money sink like Kentucky? I mean, nothing can be as big of a money sink as Kentucky, and I think it's winnable. I if I had to bet, I would say odds are against it, just because of the dynamic of Georgia and what we saw with the other Senate races. But I think it's far more possible than Kentucky was. I don't know what else to say. Superman would be socialist. Hey, Sam, I just realized that this AOC Medicare for All vote is just Bernie or bust repackaged. I think that's a good assessment. I don't want to get into it too much, but the bottom line is yes. Yeah. But the bottom line is, like, look, the idea of pressuring, using the vote as leverage made sense. The idea of using the vote as leverage for Medicare for All, I think, like, there's arguments for it and against it. I think there's probably more meaningful ways of using that vote. But this was the sort of the most, visible one. But really, I mean, let's be clear, what this turned into was really just a way to create a wedge and to undermine the little sort of power that the most left members of Congress have. You're talking about freshman congresspeople, right? Still freshmen, who have an outsized visibility because of their skills and because of where particularly online elements of the Democratic Party are headed, but other elements of the Democratic Party and just basically the population at large. And you can overplay your hand. And what this thing quickly turned into was an extension of trying to delegitimize these voices. Now, they are AOC, Omar, Tlaib, Bowman, Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley. They are not communists. They are not socialists in the strictest definition of the word. They are
not that we know of, anyway.
Well, I mean, at least in their rhetoric and the way that who knows what's in anybody's hearts?
The politicians or the people critiquing them?
I'm talking the politicians.
Right.
But they are the far most left members of the Democratic caucus. They have leveraged those positions. At the very least, we can see it in the context of helping primary establishment leadership members of the party, which is a pretty risky thing to do. And they got punished for it. AOC got kept off that committee. Now, if you wanted to leverage something, getting her in a position where she could do more of that stuff would have been a good idea too. Instead, what's happening now is that her power base is being undercut. I don't know if that's deliberate or not. It's consistent with, the what has happened in the past, and that's it. So, I
don't think it's deliberate, but I think it's a way to perform moral and political superiority in a way that drives up,
I guess by deliberate, I don't know. I think it's just sort of like it is, at one point, people have a tough time acknowledging the lack of power that their ideology has at any given point. The left is weak in this country. It is. I know what the poll says about Medicare for all. I also know what the polls say about Social Security and Medicare, period. And there was still, it took a long time to get people from not going in the Democratic caucus, to get them from going from not cutting it to at least rhetorically supporting expanding it. The reality is that, people can say I'm for Medicare for all. It doesn't mean that they're going to die on that hill. If it did, they would have voted for Bernie in the Democratic primary. We have an example of it, right? Where people said there were other values that they thought were more important, like getting rid of Donald Trump.
That was paramount.
And I didn't see them as inconsistent, but other people did. And so, you can overplay your hand. And in this instance, it's not just a question of overplaying their hand, it's punishing it was really just like an attempt to, rhetorically punish. Why I say it's deliberate is because this is because Jimmy was attacking her from before she was even in office. And so, there is, when you operate with a very, very, very basic understanding of politics that is functionally like, the cool kids in high school, and who's sitting with who at the cafeteria, in the cafeteria tables, this is what you get. And
yeah, I mean, Jimmy didn't want leverage. He shouted over Stoller about that. He wanted a referendum.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at first of all, if you look up direct action on Wikipedia, it says what it is and it says what it isn't. And what it does not include parliamentary procedural maneuvers. That's literally not what direct action means. Direct action means people coming up from the grassroots, doing actions that, grind the gears of society to a halt. That is very different than what we're talking about here. But I think it's a problem. The basic problem is that the left doesn't have any power, right? Yeah. Like, I'm fine with criticizing the politics of AOC and the squad, right? Like, we disagree on many things. I guess I would say social democrats, democratic socialists. I have a more radical critique of capitalism, but it's not about who they are as people, right? Like, we're talking about ideas here. And when you personalize it in that way, that is, I would say, a counterproductive way of looking at politics and power and how you make change. But I don't want to write off like the real frustration that people feel, even though they're being terrible to me on Twitter right now, right? Like, it's coming from a real place, and people are sick of the system that we have. They're sick of politics where you can see, like, it's very clear what people want, right? Like, over 80% of registered Democrats want Medicare for all. And yet here we are having barely moved the needle in that direction at all, right? We have a president incoming who has promised to veto Medicare for all during a pandemic. And that's frustrating to people.
Still voted for him.
I get that.
And I have frustration too. But let me just add one thing here. Just on that point that you said about the personal critique, it's not even a personal critique. I don't think if there is a policy position, if there is an ideological difference between AOC and Jimmy Dore, I've never heard it articulated. What he's arguing is that she's not even who she claims to be, which I think it's a more than a valid critique. I mean, it's a perfectly valid critique to say, like, oh, I'm to the left of her, or, she says she wants Medicare for all, but I want government run healthcare as opposed to government run health insurance.
Sort of the space right? Jamie's operating
right.
in. Right.
And what he's saying that she doesn't even believe what she's saying because she won't do what Jimmy says. And that's what it comes down to.
It's a tactical debate between social democrats that has turned very nasty and personal due to the personality issues of one person on one side of it, who a lot of people, for whatever reason, follow. And, I'm just concerned that there are people who are following him for really like legit reasons, people who are struggling, people who don't have health care, and they're just being led down a bad path of putting too much faith in electoralism itself, in parliamentary procedures, in individual metal, right? Individual character, which is a fundamentally flawed liberal way of looking at the world. And like the sooner people realize that, the better, because we need to be getting folks involved in base building, in direct action, in actual direct action, if we want the avatars of the working class like AOC to have the power to do the things we want.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, you said it all. Yeah. I just mean, we don't need to go. Yeah. Okay. You said it all. I'm done.
To all massive. Sam, really missing the audio drops. I feel like a year or two ago, this timing and selection of them was a scientific level. Do Matt and Brendan still have access to that stuff? Believe me, that is a huge frustration that we have. And we're hoping, right, Matt? Like our new system. I mean, it's basically a function of not being in studio and the technology that we have.
Yeah, and Zoom makes it difficult. But on the new system that we're going to have that's going to replace Zoom, I think audio drops might be back in a big way in 2021.
Big way. Nice. That's what I am so pining to get away from 2020. Like, honestly, like no retrospectives this year, none of that shit, because I am just so sick of this year. It is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And I know that a lot of things will like remain the same in 2021, but just the symbolic turning of the page, that's enough for me right now. I'm so sick of this shit. This is the point that we were making before about Nancy Pelosi. And I listen, we take phone calls here. We take IMs. We read emails. If somebody wants to come and argue to me
because I get a lot, and I've been saying this on Twitter for months and months about Nancy Pelosi's failure. Never mind on an ideological level, on a pure partisan political level, that she has failed. If somebody wants to come in with an argument, I am desperate to hear a counter argument. But even based upon her own metrics, Nancy Pelosi failed. She failed. There is no rationale for what she's been doing. Here is somebody asking a very simple question of her, which she cannot answer. That in and of itself is a failure.
This is a CNN reporter.
CNN reporter, Manu Raju.
Well, don't waste their time.
Oh, that was,
something up with the video file. So.
Okay, well, I mean,
she's walking away, and he asked her the question. It's not like.
Well, she would not call him. There was only about 4 or 5, according to the tweet, there was only 4 or 5 people in the conference. And he says, why are you taking this bill when you wouldn't take the other bill? Now, her response before was that Joe Biden is president and we don't need to worry about this stuff anymore or something.
Yeah.
That was what it was like 2 weeks ago. Let's play it again. Sorry.
So thank you all very much.
It's better than the Mnuchin proposal. He proposed $1.8 trillion.
Yes, so he says Pelosi wouldn't call on me at the press conference, so he had to ask that question as she was walking out the door, basically shouting it at her. This is CNN, which is becoming a pattern. Even though just 5 reporters were there, she left the press conference as I asked her the question. She ignored my question in the hallway as well. The reason she can't answer that question is because there is no good answer, except for that she was politically making a calculation that Democrats, and most importantly, Trump, would be out of office. Democrats would benefit if they filibustered on this, not literally, but on this relief bill that Mnuchin and Trump wanted to do, which was $1.8 trillion, and had the state and city funding that we needed, and had $1,200 checks, I believe, and had UI that extended longer. We don't know the full details, but this is half of that, and she can't explain why this is better, except that now a vaccine's coming in answer to our prayers, as she says.
And here's the thing, is that even if the answer is we didn't want to help Donald Trump, you now have had 45 days to come up with a better answer, even if it's a fake one. It's do some politics. Why are you running away? Why can't you, isn't anybody work in her office?
Well, just lie and say McConnell was going to shut it down and I didn't want to gum up the works with a bill that wasn't going to pass. I needed to use my political capital, which, who even knows? Put McConnell in that
that's
position.
A bad answer, too, because
it's better than walking away.
Well, I think the answer is Donald Trump is not a legitimate negotiating partner. Donald Trump, you cannot believe anything he says. Donald Trump, and okay, why wouldn't you say that? Well, maybe Donald Trump will get mad and he won't sign this bill. I mean, give me a break here. There is so many, who's that going to hurt? If you're going to do politics, do politics. Come up with an answer that helps instead of always being on the back foot, instead of running out of come up with an answer, do some politics. It's just unbelievable to me. It's just unbelievable.
But the problem is that she knows that the media, besides, yes, this is good by Manu Raju. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name right now. She knows that the media, for the most part, they fetishize the idea of compromise and don't look at the individual issues in the bill and say, okay, well, this proposal is better, this proposal is worse, because they don't want to appear biased. We, in the fun half last week, we played a clip of them asking Bernie Sanders on CNN, Wolf Blitzer, don't you know what's at stake? Don't you know how much people are hurting, when he was pushing for more money for the checks? But you can't make that argument without talking substantively about what is better and what helps people more than what doesn't. So she's not going to be held to account because the media doesn't substantively differentiate between the $900 billion stimulus and the $1.8 trillion one.
Well, I mean, the CNN is I mean, fair enough. They don't look at the substance, but I just think you come out and you say, I'm sorry. Have you been watching Donald Trump for the past 4 years? You think I'm going to take his word for it? Mitch McConnell was against the bill. Donald Trump was lying about it. There was nothing there. I was negotiating with air. There was no 1 point. I mean, that's the way, like, I don't know if that's true.
That's the rhetorical point that you're making, as opposed to.
I'm just saying, do some politics somewhere along the line here.
They don't.
It's just unbelievable to me, but I don't know.
The Democrats never do politics. They never make their own case because they're obsessed with deal making, regardless of what is in the deal. And that is the fundamental problem with the party that's supposed to be to the left of the right-wing party. They care a lot about what's in the text of the deal. They care a lot about if there's a giveaway to corporations, or if there's a liability shield, or if there's less money for unemployment and less money for working people. They give a damn about that. But Democrats, no, as long as we have a deal, there's a vaccine coming and there's a blue guy sitting in the White House soon. So that's an answer to our prayers. They don't give a shit about the substance. So the media doesn't either. And the Republicans do care. They care, and they fight like hell for there to be their proposed issues in the bills. So it's just, it drives me insane. I get your rhetorical point too, but I'm just frustrated about the fact that, like,
right,
we're not talking about what is being provided for people.
It just seems like the worst of both worlds, right? Because they're so obsessed with deals and pragmatism and, you know, playing 20-dimensional chess or whatever over, I don't know, maybe more grand ideological considerations. But then it doesn't even work, right?
That's
exactly. Bad chess players.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, I think that's why I always say, like, there's two different arguments. There's one, the ideological one, which I am on a different side, I think, than at least you know, where Nancy Pelosi is on this in terms of like PAYGO and the concept of like not spending and et cetera, et cetera. But then there's just sort of like you're playing chess and you're bad at it. I mean, you're just bad at it. Here is, and this is also sort of mystifying, although, you know, maybe we should wait until he's in office to make the full assessment. Here is Joe Biden's Surgeon General nominee. His name is Dr. Vivek Murthy. I am glad that we have a measure of competence that is going to come into the office. We're not going to have a CDC that is going to be told by political appointees that, like, oh no, you can't report on the deaths, or you can't report on you know, you need to temper those guidelines because that's going to make people think there's a pandemic going on. Here is the Surgeon General. This is where there's an opportunity for Joe Biden, and it remains to be seen if he's going to take it. But here's the Surgeon General.
But we also want to be realistic, you know, about the timeline. I think that, you know, if everything goes well, that we may see a circumstance whereby late spring, you know, people who are in lower risk categories can get this vaccine, but that would really require everything to go exactly on schedule. I think it's more realistic to assume that it may be closer to midsummer or early fall when this vaccine makes its way to the general population. So we want.
It doesn't have to be that way. Like, if, as it stands now, we're talking about late summer or early fall until there is widespread distribution of this vaccine, there are tools that the U.S. government has that the president can do unilaterally that can speed up this timeline. You know, we saw it in the context of ventilators where, you know, what was it, Ford or something was basically convinced to make ventilators, or whomever it was. We saw it in the context, you know, where, I don't know, distilleries in New York were making hand sanitizer. The Defense Production Act, the president has the ability to search around for facilities that could produce this vaccine in mass quantities. The president has the ability to find refrigerator trucks, to find warehouses. In Germany, they are building mass vaccination centers in less than a week. This can be done, and there is no excuse. I mean, this is where it's an ideological issue, because certainly there's the competence in this administration to do it. And the question becomes, why wouldn't the government exercise its authority to speed up this process, even if it's by 2 months, when you know that each month is costing, lives, mental well-being. We're talking maybe by the time of the summer, maybe it's back down to 3,000 or 2,000 deaths a day. Lives, mental well-being, and money. Why wouldn't you expend these resources to push it up a couple of months? In part, it's because they're afraid, I think, of letting people know that, wait a second, this can be done.
Things are possible. Right. So that hits the nail on the head, because when we talk about why Meadows and the Trump administration basically cut costs when it came to the vaccine and chose not to spend as much as they could on ensuring that we had the contracts to get the vaccine early or as many doses as possible, it's like this religious obsession with budget cutting for only these specific things, right? And it's so ingrained in them. The Biden technocratic neoliberal types, it's almost a religious obsession with limiting their own power, even when that's not a time when you should be doing that, right? Like, he's already laying the groundwork and saying these executive orders would be unconstitutional as reported by The Intercept. He doesn't want to allow Democrats to go down that road because that would break the orthodoxy of just little grants and tweaks around the edges. It would change the entire governing philosophy of that old guard of the Democratic Party, which obviously Biden represents.
And it's not even the old guard of the Democratic Party, right? Because the old guard of the Democratic Party, they're the ones who established these abilities.
Right.
Mm. Well, it's where you see one of the contradictions of the Biden administration, right? Because he ran on two things that don't necessarily go together, which is bureaucratic competence in the face of a pandemic and, oh, wait, better things aren't possible. And it turns out, if you really want to have bureaucratic competence in the face of a pandemic, you're going to have to stretch the powers of government a little bit. And he can do it. Like, it's legal. And the fact that he doesn't want to, I do think it's ideological. I agree.
He also ran, though, on this American exceptionalism. There's nothing we can't do. He would say that over and over again. There's nothing we can't do except Medicare for all. There's nothing we can't do except actually distribute the vaccine on the appropriate timeline to save people's lives. Like, that there are a million contradictions in this philosophy, and yet they have the intellectual and governmental arrogance as if they are the right way to go. Their philosophy is correct. Like, there's never a question that their kind of fetishization of this centrist, tweaking, marginal approach, there's never any introspection about, is this the right way to go about things? Because last time we did that for 8 years, Trump got into office, and now we're in an economic depression and the pandemic that's killed over 300,000 Americans and more to come. Like, maybe change your way of thinking. I mean, but the problem is that he was the nominee, he was validated at the ballot box, and so this is what we're going to get.
I mean, if Michael were alive, this is where I would turn to Michael and then use my joke about not getting good at something you don't want to do.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. And yes, the problem is that all of this has been received a sort of a preemptive stamp of approval by Joe Biden's core constituency, which is the Democratic Party. And so there is railing at the politicians, obviously, for not doing it. But people should understand that exercise is also really more about getting citizens to realize what their government is not doing for them so that they adopt that expectation. And because that's where it's going to have to come, whether it's from an electoral standpoint or whether it's from a direct action standpoint, those expectations have to be created, and there has to be an understanding of just like where that's not happening, and it's not happening at the very sort of tops of our of those people who have the power to do it.
Yeah, that's the job during the Biden administration more so than pulling him left is. When that doesn't happen, elaborate for people that he's not moving left when he needs to be.
I mean, that was the argument for the Clinton administration. It's just like they're a better foil than Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is just, there's so many other issues that come into it, because he's so far right that you can't see the contradiction there in what's happening with that would have been more obvious with the Clinton, and it's there with the Biden. I mean, I think Biden can be pushed left to a certain extent. Like, we see Deb Haaland is an example of that, for instance. Her appointment. He's not going to be pulled. He's not going to be Bernie Sanders. He's not going to be Elizabeth Warren. He's not going to be Pramila Jayapal. But on the margins, he can be pulled left. But yes, it is an opportunity to show the what is possible and what is being denied.
Yeah,
and that's sorry. Go on, Jamie.
That's never going to be enough, though. Like, this was the argument to some degree behind the floor vote on Medicare for All, right? Show the difference, the distance between the Democratic Party as it currently exists and as it is currently led and constituted, and the brand that it still has in the eyes of, I don't know how many people. I feel like most people at this point in time are pretty cynical about the government and what it can do for them, and what the Democrats are willing to or able to do for them, even if they vote for them, right? I feel like most of the votes for Joe Biden were not like, oh, yay, he's going to solve all the problems. There were cynical ones like, well, you know what, the best we can do is protect the status quo against the GOP, which is reactionary psychopaths, right? So like, knowing is not half the battle. Knowing is like maybe 10% of the battle, and the rest of the battle lies in building class power, which unfortunately there are not any shortcuts to, and it's a long-term project.
And I would argue that the problem with the efficacy of that vote is that, like, wait, what huge cohort of voters think that the Democratic Party is, fully embracing Medicare for all at this point? Like, beyond the 115 or whatever it is that have co-sponsored the bill, and I would say probably, 10% of them are probably, push comes to shove, wouldn't vote for it. Maybe they would in this environment because they know it's not going to pass anyways, and it's a free vote. But like, the Democratic Party just nominated a guy who said, if it's sent to me, even if it's sent to me, I'm going to sign it. Like, who is it that is like, needs to be informed of this?
And there are people who I think that the Democrats would do these things if it weren't for the Republicans, right? They're like, well, we would love to do it, but it's not politically possible or whatever. Fewer and fewer people, though. And like, the silver lining, I think, to Biden this time around versus Hillary last time around was Hillary was like offended if you suggested that she was less progressive than Bernie Sanders, right? Yeah. And Biden was like, no, I'm a centrist. That is true. Right. I'm not as progressive as him.
Right. So I agree with you. And I do think, Jamie, you're right. Like, there is a faction of Democratic voters who and they trend older, who don't see the Democratic Party as a problem, right? They see it only as the Republican Party, as a hindrance to progress, and then justified a lot of the failings of the Obama administration. But part of what bothers me, and just to bring it back to Biden and his executive order nonsense and his justification for not doing anything, Trump and Bush already broke the norms that Biden is saying that he's going to renew and replace and uphold by not doing anything, because it's this circular justification for not working on behalf of the American people. And they've gotten themselves to believe it. Like, he has internalized, and it's this really condescending attitude that actually I'm the one who's upholding America's institutions, and I saw this in Hamilton on Broadway. But what it really is your own arrogance and your own, self-obsession, where you're getting yourself to justify not working on behalf of the American public. And I fear that we're going to see this in vaccine distribution. It could,
man.
It could. But it could be done and you could save lives, but somehow you're the morally superior one for not using everything in your power because you're returning to constitutional norms that you've decided are concrete but aren't actually, that have already been broken down by past Republican administrations, but there's never any chance for Democrats to do it reverse or the inverse because they decide that it's not possible and it makes them feel better.
Man.
Well, you saw the reports that Biden deprioritized immigration because activists are getting too above their station, right? Like this is just
one might say uppity, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a ruling party that has ringing in their ear on the left, and they think everything's just annoying from it, and they can't hear the actual message coming from it. And
they're flexing their power. They're flexing their muscles. They're saying, "Hey, guess what? You guys don't have any power in this situation to hold us accountable or make us do what you want." So that's that.
Like I say, though, you can see. There are, when things align, and they have to align, right? Like it has to be that there was only a certain amount of potential picks he could have had for, let's say, Interior and, others. That, Rahm Emanuel is not in the administration. That's good. That he's not in the administration in a very public way. Also good. It is, there are people out there, I'm convinced, who take lessons from that. Not us. I'm saying like little baby Rahm Emanuels go like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be Rahm Emanuel. Maybe I need to be a little bit softer than to be Rahm Emanuel if I want to move ahead in my career. And that's a good thing to project out there. I understand it's incremental, but it makes a difference.
No, I hear you. It gets me mad that they justify it to themselves by finding themselves to be the righteous ones.
Of course. But people should understand a small decision made at that level is going to impact the lives of millions of people. And it can either be for marginally better or marginally worse. And that is, I'm not saying that people should have, thank God Rahm Emanuel is not in the White House parties, but it is a marginally better thing.
Now I'm thinking about baby Rahm Emanuels.
Calling from a 425 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is David. I'm calling from Seattle.
David from Seattle. What's on your mind?
Hey, not much.
Okay. Goodbye.
Sorry. I wanted to send my sincerest condolences to John from San Antonio. I've been listening to this program now for about 2 years. And his contribution makes it so much better. And I've been somewhat aware of the situation he's been going through. So I just wanted to say a lot of love and solidarity to John.
I appreciate that.
But I'm calling because I just wanted to make a comment to you guys about what's going on in the restaurant world. I'm a bartender out here in Seattle, and there's a massive weight, I think, that's been placed on restaurant workers that just doesn't get brought up enough. Shout out to Jamie, because I know she's mentioned service workers and kind of the crap that we go through. But my partner actually put it really well. We've been deputized without authority, essentially. I mean, when you take the COVID restrictions, which I of course agree with, but you really boil them down to, where does the rubber meet the road? Like, how does this actually get enforced? Ultimately, it's enforced by people like me, bartenders, baristas, you name it. And it's just a total lack of support for us group. And yet, we're expected to basically be the mask police. And, it's a pretty screwed up situation that I don't think I talked about enough.
But you're getting paid extra for that extra job, right?
Yeah, right. Not so much.
I know I have, I know I have a good friend who's going through some of this, and it is, in many respects, I mean, I don't know how your management or your owners are, but a lot of management owners are also sort of both undercutting people's ability to do that, expecting them to be exposed, expecting them to be thankful that they're getting paid at all, not providing, like Jamie points out, any type of actual extra cash. I mean, all of this should be completely moot. You know, the answer should be you're getting paid by your restaurant basically an average of what you would earn on any given week. And the restaurant has filed the papers with the U.S. government, and they're getting paid essentially, you know, what they'd be making on a general week. Maybe you give them a 6% profit margin or whatever it is, or 8% margin. They can show, you know, above what they're, you know, if they've got a loan and they got to pay that off or whatever it is. All of this should be moot. And instead, it is basically the frontline workers, and that's what you are as a bartender, frontline workers who are tasked with beyond the responsibility of, or the being essentially forced for survival to actually like risk their health. They're being given the responsibility and none of the authority to make sure that they're protecting the health of everybody else around them. I mean, it's completely effed up. It's insane. I mean, honestly, like if somebody dropped down, if like an alien dropped down into our country and they had just come from Germany or something, and they're like, what are you guys doing? Oh, what we're doing? It's completely insane.
I mean, it's totally true. And the problem too, I've actually, we did another round of minor lockdowns, not nearly enough what we needed to do. And I just told my manager, basically, you know, take me off the schedule until we get back into phase 2 or whatever. Because for one, I mean, even the coworkers that I work with, I mean, you just can't expect people to immediately take this as seriously as they ought to. There's no health worker training. There's nobody coming in, checking in with the workers, making sure that they, you know, understand what needs to be done and are being supported in that way. But, and, you know, I don't want to take too much time. The last thing I wanted to mention, and I really tried to press this on my coworkers, was trying to get them to understand that this is a function of a total failure of the federal government to provide any funding for states so that they could provide the funding that I think you're talking about there, Sam, because the reality is a lot of workers, at least, you know, my coworkers, they just look around and they think, oh, well, this is just how this pandemic is. There's no way this could have been any different. And I'm constantly trying to press on them. I mean, last thing I'll say, that PPP loan, the day that expired, it was like night and day. Shifts were getting cut. You know, I go from being expected to run a restaurant with, you know, 5, maybe like total with kitchen, like 8 workers. Well, they're cutting that down to 4. And also, we're going to keep it open longer. And so basically, I just want you to do, you know, now I want you to wear 3 hats and then maybe 4 hats down the road. And yeah, so, you know, I just want to call in and make a mention of that. And also shout out to Jamie, because she has brought up service workers and kind of the BS that we go through a lot. And yeah, I love this program, by the way. I really appreciate you taking my call.
Thanks for the call. And I would add too, that there's a disincentive by the owners to even do like performative things that indicate to other people that they should take this seriously, right? Like, look, I wear a mask down, you know, I'm walking down Flatbush. I don't see anybody for a block. I wear the mask because it indicates, like, just broadly speaking, other people are taking this seriously. I should take this seriously. It indicates that to that. If you own a restaurant, you don't have an incentive to do that because you want people to come in. You want your workers to come in. You want your customers to come in. So you don't have an incentive to make it seem like it's super serious. Like, I know stories of restaurant owners. Hey, email to everybody. Just want you to know somebody had COVID. Don't worry about it. Wait, what? Who's the person? I can't tell. Well, wait a second. How do I know if I've been in contact? Well, everybody can take a day off and then you got to be in the next day. Like, they have a disincentive to take it, to project how serious it is, because they don't want to scare off their workers from coming in or their customers from coming in. I mean, it is so effed up. It's It's nuts.
Well, and they're literally incentivized to do the opposite. And the unfortunate thing is that even the workers are like this. Like, I'll have certain bartenders that, you know, oh yeah, people aren't supposed to stand in the bar, but you know, John's cool, so I'll let him do it. And the rules get pushed to the absolute, basically whatever the line is drawn by the state, the restaurant, this is just a function of, I think, just owning a business and trying to maximize profit. They will push that absolutely to the line.
Yep.
They're not going to go above and beyond to ensure safety for their workers or for the people inside. They're just going to try to maximize profit and hope to survive this whole thing, which some of them aren't even going to do that, even with ignoring as much of the restrictions as they can.
Yep. And there are certainly better bosses and worse bosses within this dynamic, but really, as you've brought up, it's a problem with the system when you are incentivized profit-wise to do the wrong thing for public health. That's what a business owner is going to do. And if they don't do it, they're actually a bad business owner under the rubric of the system.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to track one term over the course of this whole COVID thing, it's essential worker, and it didn't come to mean someone who deserves a pay increase and new hazard pay because of their previous undercompensation. It meant a person we can force to work during this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. Do we just have a problem with our sound? Did Matt and Jamie sounded a little bit crispy on that?
Oh, really?
Brendan, did you hear that?
No, they sounded fine to me.
Can you hear me now?
No, maybe it's just coming in.
I heard it.
Maybe it's just coming in our.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, we can hear you, but
It can hear you, but it's like
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there's a buzz that's coming in, but maybe as long as that's not going out, that's okay. This is fun. Apparently, there are you cannot get away with going on national television and making up a story about, say, a voting system that involves your ballots traveling from Georgia to various servers around the world that involve a U.S. covert military operation to secure a server in Germany so that QAnon folks can capture and find out what actually happened to those votes that have been sent by this system that wasn't even used in these areas in which the voting actually took place. Now, if you are a fan of Lou Dobbs,
I am.
Or if you're a fan like Jamie of Maria Bartiromo,
mm-hmm.
Or if you're a fan like Brendan is of Janine Pirro on Fox News.
I love the idea of Brendan in his free time.
Brendan has never not seen an episode of
she's a
of
weekend
Judge
host,
Janine.
right? So that's how he spends
If you
his
are
time.
one of those fans, you are probably maybe taking some Advil. Maybe you're seeing your doctor. Maybe you're going to try and get some type. Maybe you got one of those massage things because you have suffered whiplash. For weeks, these people have been telling you that this smart tech, am I saying that right? Smartmatic
There we go.
voting system with deep ties to the late Hugo Chavez and George Soros has been manipulating the voting. And apparently, at one point, Smartmatic said, you know what? I think we're done with this. We had no way, we were no way involved with the voting in Georgia. Our votes aren't sent to Germany or Romania. None of it. None of this is true. And in fact, since you're on television lying about it, we're going to send you a cease and desist order, and we may actually sue you, in which case bankrupt all of you. This is how Lou Dobbs reacted.
Lots of opinions about the integrity of the election, the irregularities of mail-in voting, of election voting machines and voting software. One of the companies is Smartmatic, and we reached out to one of the leading authorities on open source software for elections, Eddie Perez, for his insight and views. Eddie is
want to make something clear. When that Chiron says a closer look at the claims about Smartmatic, what it should read is a closer look at speaking of Lou Dobbs, claims about Smartmatic.
He goes, a lot of opinions about the voting.
Yeah, there's a lot of different opinions.
Didn't have a pretty clear one.
Exactly.
We reached out to them.
And here's the best part. Yeah, we reached out to an expert. This is amazing. This piece, I think Smartmatic made it because the questions that are being asked don't seem to be being asked by anybody associated with Lou Dobbs' program. They just ran this PKG, what do they call it? EPK, this electronic press kit, essentially. And they're like, okay, we're going to give our show over to the people who are right.
Our legal team.
Our legal team is going to prepare this. Here we go. And we reached out to an expert, right? Okay, roll it.
Eddie Perez for his insight and views. Eddie is the Global Director of Tech Development at the Open Source Election Technology Institute. We ask him for his assessment of Smartmatic and recent claims about the company.
My recent claims.
Have you seen any evidence that Smartmatic software was used to flip votes anywhere in the U.S. in this election?
I have not seen any evidence that Smartmatic software was used to delete, change, alter anything related to vote tabulation.
Smartmatic says its software was never used outside of L.A. County in 2020. Do you know whether or not that's true?
That is my understanding. Smartmatic functioned.
Let's go. Wait, because I want to stop. Let's now. We have another version of this. Mario Barato Ramo had to do the exact same thing. Let's run that one.
Integrity, we have heard concerns about both voting machines and voting software, specifically a software company called Smartmatic. This week, we reached out to Eddie Perez for insight. He is the Global Director of Tech Development at the Open Source Election Technology Institute. His team develops open source software for elections. We asked him what he knew about Smartmatic and the claims some have made about that company.
Have you seen any evidence that Smartmatic software was used to flip votes anywhere in the U.S. in this election?
I have not seen any evidence that Smartmatic software was used to delete, change, alter anything related to vote tabulation.
Wait.
Wait, it's almost like that's the same clip.
It
That's
seems
their
very,
legal team.
very similar. I love the
Fox News, Fox Business.
I love the way the producer on this, who's asking the questions, is able to replicate his intonations from the last package they ran. But
And I
wait a
love
second.
how they have the exact text on the screen, almost as if they copy and pasted it from the legal document provided to their legal team by Smartmatic, who said, look, we have a case. We have a serious case. So you better word for word use our legal jargon.
I have a feeling, honestly, they're just like, hey, we'll take 2 minutes. Here's our package. What did they do over at Newsmax? At least they're brave enough to take on the deep state. So they're not going to buckle, right, Matt?
Since Election Day, various guests, attorneys, and elected officials have appeared on Newsmax and offered opinions and claims about Smartmatic and Dominion Systems, both companies that offer voting software in the U.S., and Newsmax would like to clarify its news coverage and note that it has not reported as true certain claims made about these companies. There are several facts our viewers and readers should be aware of. Newsmax has found
Sorry, go ahead.
no evidence that either Dominion or Smartmatic owns the other or has any business association with each other. We have no evidence that Dominion uses Smartmatic software or vice versa. No evidence has been offered that Dominion or Smartmatic used software or reprogrammed software that manipulated votes in the 2020 election. Smartmatic has stated that its software was only used in the 2020 election in Los Angeles, was not used in any battleground state contested by the Trump campaign. Newsmax has no evidence to the contrary. Dominion has stated the company has no ownership relationship with the Pelosi family. the Feinstein family, the Clinton family, Hugo Chavez, or the government of Venezuela. Neither Dominion nor Smartmatic has any relationship with George Soros. Smartmatic is a U.S. company and not owned by the Venezuelan government, Hugo Chavez, or any foreign official or entity. Smartmatic states that it has no operations in Venezuela. While the company did election projects in Venezuela from 2004 to 2017, it was never founded by Hugo Chavez, nor did it have a corrupt relationship with him or the Venezuelan government. For more on this, please go to our website at newsmax.com. Read facts about Dominion Smartmatic that you should know.
Yeah, where we copy and pasted everything about beautiful Smartmatic.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before in my life.
Smartmatic is the most ethical company in America. I have a Smartmatic t-shirt. Please go to their website, buy some Smartmatic merch for your family and friends. Promo code Newsmax.
That was a bombshell.
That was
an anti-bombshell.
Unbelievable. Yeah, exactly. It was like a black hole. We're just going to suck up every single thing that we've said over the past 4 weeks. Like literally hours and hours and hours and hours of conspiracy being sucked up. Like, I imagine we're going to see like Giuliani on his radio show is going to have to like retract all this stuff.
Oh my God.
I mean, this is going to be like, you're going to turn on Newsmax and like 23 out of 24 hours of the day programming is just going to be like one of those Smartmatic industrials. Like, here at Smartmatic, we produce hey, Jimmy, how are you? Hi, Bob, where to go? Hey, look at our new product here at Smartmatic. That's what
the latest technology, not influenced by Hugo Chavez. Yeah, I mean,
if you want to be in a growth industry, take a job as a Smartmatic industrial voiceover guy. And that's it right there.
You want some great return on your stock? I've heard Smartmatic. They're on the up and up, but they do have a very concise legal team. It seems like they sufficiently scared not just rinky-dink Newsmax, but the big kahuna, or what do you call the big white whale.
Yeah,
Fox
exactly.
News. Kahunas was not the right term.
I just love.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I just love the idea that they're passing it off as if that's a news segment. I love, like, they're fulfilling legal obligations because they're scared, but actually this is just us doing the news. That's a very funny move.
We've done some deeper research.
I know.
And it involved how much we could withstand a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. And it turns out not that much.
But we have our best reporters on this, and by reporters, I mean lawyers.
Poor Charlie Kirk. Poor Charlie Kirk.
Has he gotten some sleep?
Charlie Kirk apparently has had like a string of really stupid things to say on Twitter. What was didn't he just like there was something he put out there where he was basically trying to show some math about how is it possible that Donald Trump won more counties but had less votes?
Mm-hmm.
And apparently nobody told him that, like, well, counties are not a
exact division of the United States population into subsections?
That's correct. That counties are not configured in such a way that everybody would have different voting, that there would be the same amount of voters in each county. Apparently, he just did not understand what counties. I think he probably meant like closer like districts, like congressional districts, maybe.
County districts, one and the same when you're a political commentator that doesn't know politics.
Exactly. There he is. And that there was something else he said about, I can't remember what it was about science that people were ragging on him, but here he is. He's moving on. What Charlie seems to be doing is he is going to hit every possible academic discipline and show that he doesn't have even a rudimentary grasp on any of it. Here he is talking about how history's being done wrong in this country, apparently. This is what he had to say on Fox and Friends.
The idea of the 1776 Commission is to focus on the founding of our country, that a year after the founding of our country in 1777, Vermont abolished slavery on their own, that it's our country that was founded on freedom and liberty and the pursuit of being a better nation, not this hyperfixation as the left tries to have it, on the worst aspects of our history. And we're not going to ignore them, by the way, Pete. We understand that America has fallen short many times. However, to label America as anything less than the greatest country ever to exist, that has always been about self-improvement, is a disservice to everyone that has sacrificed for this nation, and quite honestly, how incredible the history of our country has been.
Yeah.
It's all weird emotion. Like, I mean, don't you grow out of these kinds of bizarre fantasies when you become an adult?
Yeah, this is George Washington cherry tree level stuff.
Depends who's paying your rent, right?
Right, I get it. Well, but I genuinely think there are a majority of Republicans genuinely believe that the empirical reality of America being the greatest country on earth cannot be questioned because it is some sort of science, as opposed to like, oh, different countries have different strengths and weaknesses. It's like this childish mentality I can't understand.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Charlie Kirk has a problem that you would see in Hollywood, which is you're a child star or actor. And then as you grow a little older, you're not as cute anymore.
Yeah.
And you lose, this is metaphorically speaking,
you get
right?
acne,
You get, or your voice changes and you can't play that character and people still want you to have this expectation. And Charlie's aging out of the age where he can pretend like he's speaking to college students. And he knows that. He's looking 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road.
Or persecuted for not being able to speak to college students.
Indeed. And his chief supporter passed away, and I don't know how much, was left in the will. Maybe Charlie doesn't know. Who knows? And so he's trying to pivot, and he's just going for the very, very low-hanging, rudimentary sort of propaganda, which is history should not be about the bad stuff. History should be about the good stuff. That's what you need right there.
And just to go to a Wikipedia level of this history, here's the note. This is from the Slavery Abolition Timeline Wiki. The Constitution of Vermont Republic partially banned slavery, freeing men over 21 and women older than 18 at the time of its passage. The ban is not strongly enforced.
And I would argue the fact that a state partially banned slavery is probably, that's because the rest of the states did not. The founding of the country, because the country did not. So there was some inclination in some parts of Vermont where there was a suggestion that you shouldn't have a slave if they're older than 21.
But that shouldn't count because that's a socialist state run by commie
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders.
Also,
he's that old.
You're 21 in Vermont in 1776. It's not like you've got a huge amount of time ahead of you.
Yeah, you're gonna die. That you're middle aged at that point.
Like the average, the average lifespan at that time was probably in the 40s, I would say.
For working people, people that aren't landed, I imagine. Yeah.
I mean, just to piggyback onto this, the thing that Charlie's talking about is this commission that Trump has assembled for patriotic learning as a response to the 1619 project. And I know we just had this big conversation about the failures of meritocracy and things like that, but I don't think the education program of this country should be dictated by a guy who only has a high school education. Just my 2 cents on that.
What, Charlie didn't go to college?
No, look,
Charlie didn't go to college.
Yeah, I think.
Wow, for someone who's so obsessed with college.
Yes.
Charlie
assumed.
He said in one of his books that he was admitted to West Point, but it was revoked, and a woman of color got his spot instead, I believe.
And then Foster, who was.
I feel like he said that he said that on his speaking tour. He said that too.
Yeah, well, he also said the guy who died, I forget what his name is, but the TPUSA guy who died of COVID over summer convinced him to forego college anywhere and become a right-wing propagandist. And yeah, definitely that should not, a guy who makes that decision should not be deciding anything.
Now I feel like he's panicking because he's lost his sinecure maybe, and he realizes he's aging out of the I'm one of you college kids. You can get away with it.
It's dude, you're 30.
To hit the 30. and it's going to be a little bit harder for him to go onto the campus. And then there's going to be all these sort of like, wait a second, how appropriate is it that I'm socializing with
It'll
them?
be like a 21 Jump Street situation, or he's gonna look like a cast member from Grease, the
What was
movie.
that Steve Buscemi thing where he goes up to the kids and he's like, "Hi, fellow teenagers."
That is from 30 Rock, one of the greatest sitcoms ever.
And he goes in, and so now he's like a little bit worried about this, and he's like, "What am I qualified for?" I don't know, right?
And it's not like he's been doing any reading.
Right.
Oh, sure. No, reading is beneath him. He has to post or write.
No. I see this as a quirky romantic comedy, like Never Been Kissed with Drew Barrymore, where Charlie Kirk finally goes to college and, passes himself off as a student, or maybe not. But the point is, at the end, he's finally going to have his first kiss. And I think that's super nice for him.
And he becomes a SJW.
That he's trying to impress her, and he becomes an SJW.
Who kisses him though?
This started
That's
out
the
as
big
just a
question.
way to meet, to curry favor with her. But now I'm actually like a full-fledged feminist.
Mm-hmm. I would.
Is it like
the
that?
end of his arc is a pink hair.
What was that Rodney Dangerfield
Turn.
movie where he went back to college with his son or something? I can't remember what that was.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I know what you're talking about.
Lastly, this is Representative John Curtis from Utah on with Bayana Goldraya of CNN. And, is it really a coup if you fail?
Of Utah, Congressman, you were one of the first Republicans in Congress to acknowledge President-elect Biden's victory. I want to get your reaction to the stunning reporting out of an Oval Office meeting last night, including talk of martial law and screaming matches.
Well, let me just tell you, I've been in Congress for 3 years, and for 3 years I keep hearing all of these worst-case scenarios. We have to remember it was a conversation, not a revolution. There are far more important things in front of us, and I think we need to move on and tackle them.
But that's all you have to say to that? I mean, I understand there are far more important issues, and we had you on to talk about COVID, and we will in a second. But we can't just grow numb to incidents that would happen in a third world country, and we would have a State Department that would be alarmed about hearing these types of reports.
Listen, you're talking about a conversation that reportedly took place. We don't know anything about the details, and you just can't get me all riled up about that.
Does it bother you?
It bothers me that it's such a big deal to so many people who know nothing about the facts and know nothing about the details. Let's get some facts.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy, I know how you could get some facts. Let's say you were a congressman and you went over to the opposition party, who would be more than happy to set up a committee to investigate this. In fact, if he called for investigation, it really is. I mean, look, I understand that Flynn is a bit of a Looney Tune. And although I think, if I was a foreign government, I wanted someone kidnapped and he was national security, chief national security advisor, he would be the guy I would go to because he's shown his willingness to work as a foreign agent for Turkey.
Yeah.
So moonlighting. And the idea that maybe Sidney Powell will be made like some type of independent prosecutor, special prosecutor to look at the idea that these conversations are having in the White House. It's very easy for us to say he's a lunatic. It's not for real. But look at how much the reporting of him almost wanting to give $2,000 to people got. This seems to be, pretty serious, the idea that these conversations were entertained in this in the office. I remember when Lepage, Governor Lepage of Maine, former, had sovereign citizens in who were telling him that the seat of power rests with the sheriff, the local sheriff, and that he had it within his rights to be able to assassinate members of the opposing party in the legislature. And lawyers had to intervene to get this governor off the thing. Well, this guy's the president of the United States. And you've got a congressman who's just like, we got other things. Who knows? I mean, it's...
And the ridiculous distinction between revolutions and conversations. Like, things that harm democracy or whatever is left of it in this country. By the way, I was a little annoyed by CNN's like derisive third world comment, but
right.
I digress because, you know, we're in a banana republic now. Let's not pretend we're above certain areas of the world. But like the idea that a revolution would begin without these specific conversations, like this is a false dichotomy that's set up to protect him from scrutiny.
Right.
That's all. And it's a bad talking point because revolutions don't just come out of nowhere. It's not just some guy coming into the street. How did the American Revolution start? I don't know.
I'm more worried about coups where nobody says a word to each other before
the
it
silent
starts.
coup.
Like, I'm the reporter. You're the congressperson. I decide what I want to ask about. And like the idea that, I mean, I've read stuff about Nixon during Watergate and people really fearful that he might have escalated something. That pales in comparison to like explicit conversations.
Yeah.
So it's newsworthy.
And the idea that in these meetings, Sidney Powell, who's an absolute lunatic, was being discussed as being appointed special counsel, where I believe she'd be immune from being ousted based on those protections. Yeah, that's fairly significant when she has no connection to reality. And like, I am no doctor, but I would think maybe someone needs to inspect her. That's just my sense.
Doctor inspection?
Although she is a feminist icon.
Calling from a final call of the day, 470. Who's this? Where you calling from? $470.
It's Hugo Chavez.
Okay, well, no conversation. That must mean no coup. Or no, that means a coup, right? Calling from a 785 area code. Who's this?
Hi, my name is Elliot. I'm from Kansas.
Hi, Elliot from Kansas. Boy, are you in radio? Do you work in radio?
Hi.
No.
I liked it.
Do
I
people
like
ever say to you,
enthusiasm.
like, you should work in radio?
I've had that told to me multiple times throughout my life.
I'm not surprised by that one bit. Elliot, what's on your mind?
I was calling to ask if any of you knew of any way that there would it be worth my time as a citizen of Kansas, you know, a Republican state, to even look and see if there's some kind of international aid that you can apply for or find. I mean, I have personally been unemployed for 9 months now, and there is no help. It seems impossible to get a hold of the unemployment offices here. My wife and I applied for food stamps on her income, and they said she makes too much.
Jesus.
So, you know, we're just, and $600, you know, yeah, it's nice. It'll cover my portion of the rent for January, but that's about it. So, you know, I didn't know if any of you had heard. I was unable to find anything because it's desperate here. There's not a whole, you know, I mean, there's a lot of farming opportunities, but other than that, there's not a whole lot here in Kansas. So.
Right. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know what to suggest to you. I mean, $1,200. That's obviously not going to be sufficient, you know, after a couple of weeks. I don't have any direct suggestions. I mean, you know, if you're comfortable doing it, if you have a Twitter account, go and set up a GoFundMe. You know, I think.
Do you have a Venmo name or a PayPal that you can say on air here?
I do not. I know my wife and I have set up a. It's not exactly a GoFundMe, but she was in a car accident 2 months ago and totaled our the newer car we had purchased. And so now we're down to one operating vehicle, and we set up one for that, and some people donated money. But, you know, I understand that it's not easy for everybody else as well. So,
well, can you give us a way to search for it? I'll search for it now.
I don't have it off the top of my
Or
head.
tag us with it on Twitter, maybe, or
tweet at us.
I will tag you guys on it. I'll tag you guys in it on Twitter.
And maybe email majorityreporters@gmail.com too.
Okay.
It does seem like there's an opening though for like President Xi or someone to come in and say, I stand with the people of America, and give some aid to people with, obviously strings attached, just like when the US does it to countries where they're trying to destabilize governments. But like I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet.
Hugo Chavez did that with heating oil during the Bush years. Hugo Chavez offered free heating oil. And in fact, some people went out. I think it was Bobby Kennedy or one of the Kennedys went out and secured like low-cost heating oil for the New England states directly from Chavez.
Did not know that.
Appreciate the call.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
And then, of course, Chavez faked his own death so he could change the voting tallies in Georgia.
To install Biden.
What a Chad.
What a Chad. So that takes some real cojones. All right, folks, that's it for our phone calls today. Apologies. Didn't get to as many as we want. I almost feel like maybe like on Christmas Day, I'll just hop on and just do like 2 hours of phone calls just by myself, drunk.
Sacrilegious.
I mean, not for me.
No, I know. For me to be associated with you.
Well, you wouldn't. Of course, you're going to go celebrate Christmas, but you're only like, I'll just do this at home. Some are saying the squad can demand this. Left-wing Paul Ryan. Some are saying the squad can demand this and unequivocally 100% not risk losing speakership to a Republican. I don't understand how that's possible. Isn't it Sam, been seeing conflicting takes on if an actual path to vote present by the squad and get someone in there besides Pelosi, does that risk McCarthy? No. I would imagine if they abstain, if enough abstain so that Pelosi can't get the majority, the Republicans are going to vote for McCarthy.
Yep. And there's no Democratic alternative, so no one else is running for speaker. Like there have been times in the past. Did Tim Ryan officially run? Why am I blanking on this?
He ran. I don't know if
Seth Moulton, I thought.
But they ran. Yeah. They ran for not the speakership. They basically were running unofficially because I don't know if they actually had an actual vote. They, after the whip counts. But maybe there was actual vote of just the leadership of the Democratic caucus. And then once that's established, they go to the full House floor vote.
So he ran in 2016 for Democratic speaker or Democratic leader.
Correct.
Right. And
Correct.
because there was no majority at that time.
There was no majority?
The Democrats were not in the majority when this happened.
In 2016?
Yeah.
He's just running for caucus.
Right.
Chair, or maybe this was run up to the 2018.
No, it was 2016. Right. Yeah. In 2018, that's when we had the whole Hakeem Jeffries, Barbara Lee debacle.
Oh, right. Exactly.
I wonder if
Chardonnay Socialists. Yes, please, to 2 hours of drunk phone calls on Christmas Day. Happy to donate a serious bottle of bourbon toward the endeavor. Well, wait a second. Maybe now I'm starting to see how this could work. Simple Socialist. As a socialist, I have no problem using merit to determine positions in a society that people are best suited for, but I have a problem determining worth from this. From each according to their ability, to each according to their need in simple terms.
And like access to the basic necessities of life, right? Like even under full communism, different people are going to have different aptitudes for different kinds of things, different kinds of jobs, some people are going to be better at one thing. Some people are going to be better at different things. Some people are going to be smart in one way. Some people might be dumb in that way and smart in a different way, but it should never determine your access to the basic necessities that you need to live a decent life and even thrive.
Well, that was the thing. I mean, the Sandel's argument, in my mind, is really best deployed for folks who are sort of immediately allergic to the idea of like any type of broad expansion of socialism within the context of our socialistic policies, right? within our government. I mean, and you can somehow figure out, like, piecemeal how to provide more resources, more pay to specific jobs and this and that. But if you want society to basically say we're all valued, then you provide them with these basic necessities. Like we all have a basic value. Boom. Okay. You're all getting health care. We all have a basic value. Boom. You're all getting childcare. We all have a basic value. Okay. Boom. You all have housing. I mean, that's, to me, the easiest way to do it. And, beyond that, there may be, tweaks within the context. I mean, from my perspective of negotiations and how much you're allowed to accrue relative to other people, et cetera, et cetera. But that, to me, I think, is the straightest line there. You need to start with that sort of foundation, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, people have different positions in society. But once society has basically said, like, we're not going to let anybody live in our society without these benefits or rights, or however you want to describe them. And then, you have the opportunity, if you really want, certain things, like, you're at the very least, the things that are holding you back are not going to be survival is not going to hold you back. You're going to survive, and you're going to, and better than survival, but surviving, with a high bar as to what constitutes survival in modern society.
Yeah, that part should not be controversial.
Promo code for Sam OnlyFans. Sam, I send IMs every day, multiple even, and I never get my IMs read. Why is that? How do you select which IMs you want to read live? Are other listeners slipping you fivers along with their IMs? What's the deal? What's a peasant got to do to be heard around here? Is there a commodification of reading people's IMs on your show? No, it's actually, there is a hierarchy, and it really is first come, first serve, just because of the nature of the IM system, more or less.
But now you got your IM read. So.
And that was it. And that's it that's it. No more for 2020 for you. Matt Gates, totally real son. Hey, Sam, I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to change my subscription to a free one for the time being. I'm a home remodeler, and even though I've been working through these times, I've gotten a little hard. I can't tell you how much I appreciate being able to hear my favorite show during the day. When money gets a little less tight, I will not only renew my paid subscription, but I also grab some great-looking Carpenter pencils. Yeah, I thought the Carpenter pencils have like a wider appeal, but it turns out like it's very hard to sharpen those unless you have like utility knives around or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
Good promo for the Carpenter pencils.
It is a reminder, if you are a member of the show and you have any type of financial stress whatsoever, go and cancel. We will give you the opportunity to have a comp membership. That is available to you. And of course, if you are, so if you're not a member or you want to be one, or somebody who wants to be one, send an email, majorityreporters@gmail.com. Wait a long time, then we will hook you up. And the wait a long time is really just inefficiencies in our workflow, nothing beyond that. Chapo just did an Avatar episode, and y'all come out doing this anti-Avatar bit. Stop dividing the left.
That's hilarious.
Jiz Gargelet writing to spray. Oh, thank you. Holiday cheer all over the MR crew. Thank you. Thanks for helping a lonely Gargelet like myself through this year. I hope you all have a happy new year. I look forward to more high-level discussion of important ideas. Signed, Jiz Gargelet.
That was something.
Yes. Well, Jiz Gargelet has been around for a long time, and I give them a French. I impose a French pronunciation on their name. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more IMs. The Tim Caucus. Sam, want to echo a suggestion from last week about inviting Bree Joy Gray on. Think you could have a good faith discussion on progressive strategy and clear some air of the hanging over the left media. Yeah. The only white boy who did it. If you know anyone who still believes in meritocracy, ask them how they know who Dave Rubin is. If they say yes, show them a pic of his house. If they don't, congratulate them, show them any Rubin clip, and then show them a pic of his house. Split Spliff, tell Emma that little Pete Booty Butt also loves the movie Plane, Trains, and Automobiles. Hashtag qualified, so stop hating Emma.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake.
Unix Joker, I love that the Jimmy Dore stand version of direct action is asking your elected representative to vote for something.
Know.
I guess
literally the opposite.
I guess yard signs are a direct action too. Uchi Wally, Endgame was the biggest movie ever. Cyborg backup, when I think neoliberal shill, I think Jamie Peck. Ardwan, what pisses me off most about meritocratic thinking is it's so hard for people with disabilities, especially most invisible handicaps, because there's so much people that will always think that those folks just need to try harder and harder to hear things like everyone get tired sometimes to people with chronic fatigue. Thank you for doing an amazing interview. Love to watch it. And the final I am of the day. Kiara McNamee, the unnamed YouTuber, has succeeded in nothing but amplifying infighting among the left and fracturing a growing resistance movement in its infancy, which is kind of the point of everyone criticizing said YouTuber. Great work, Jagoff nightclub comedian. Okay, folks, see you.
Tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know